and land degradation. These challenges are deeply interconnected, and so must be our responses. This session, organized under the Rio Convention's Joint Capacity Building Program, intends to provide a platform to explore how African countries can strengthen their capacities to materialize the synergies across climate, biodiversity, and land to deliver greater impact on the ground. Africa Climate Week is the perfect setting for this dialogue. It showcases climate leadership, highlights regional innovation, and helps mobilize partnerships for ambitious implementation. By advancing synergies, by strengthening capacities to advance synergies, we can ensure that Africa's climate action also safeguards biodiversity, sustains land, and supports, most importantly, livelihoods. Today, we will share success stories, discuss what are the persistent challenges, and how to co-develop solutions for planning, enhancing capacities, and a more efficient access of financing. These insights will help shape insights towards COP30 in Belém, where fielding synergies will be an important element in the discussions. With that, and without further ado, it is my great pleasure to invite our opening speaker, Dr. Hamud Hamdou Dorsuma, Head of Division, Climate and Green Growth Department at the African Development Bank, to share his perspective from the perspective of a multilateral development bank on how and why strengthening synergies is vital for Africa's sustainable future. Please, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Alejandro. Distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, colleagues, it's a pleasure to be here today under the framework of the Rio Convention's Joint Capacity Building Program and on the occasion of this Africa Climate Week here in Addis Ababa. Allow me first to thank our partners, the UNFCCC Secretariat, the UNCCD, the UNCBD, and the NDC Partnership, as well as the NBSAP Accelerator Partnership, for convening this important dialogue. As we all know, Rio Conventions were born together in 1992. They recognize that the three crises of our time, global warming, land degradation, and biodiversity loss, are deeply interconnected. Nowhere is this reality more evident than in the African continent, where climate impacts, soil erosion, and ecological decline converge to undermine livelihoods, food security, and long-term development prospects. Yet, while these challenges are interlinked, too often our responses remain fragmented. Ministries, projects, and financing streams are separated by silos. This fragmentation weakens our collective impact. To change this trajectory, we need synergies in planning, in project design, in investments, and in implementation. At the African Development Bank, we see these synergies as practical pathways to accelerate sustainable development. For instance, integrated approaches to climate adaptation and land degradation can increase agricultural productivity while enhancing biodiversity and strengthening resilience. Second, nature-based solutions can deliver mitigation, adaptation, and conservation benefits simultaneously, especially in Africa's drylands, forests, and coastal zones. Third, aligning national climate strategies such as NDCs with land degradation neutrality targets as well as biodiversity targets can unlock efficiencies and attract innovative financing. This vision is already shaping our work at the African Development Bank. Through our 10-year strategy 2024-2033, our climate action plan, and the Africa Development Fund, we have embedded the Rio Conventions in the bank's operations and therefore supporting our members countries to meet their obligation in this regard. This is illustrated by our new instrument, the Climate Action Window, which provides dedicated resources for Africa's most vulnerable countries, and also the Africa Climate Change Fund and many other financial instruments at the bank that play a catalytic role in supporting countries to prepare and implement integrated projects. On the ground, these commitments already translate into tangible results. For instance, in the Sahel and Horn of Africa, the bank is a key partner of the Great Green Wall Initiative, restoring degraded lands and creating jobs as well as building resilience across 11 countries. In many African countries, integrated watershed and forest management projects are reducing erosion, protecting biodiversity, and providing sustainable livelihoods for farmers. Another example is Morocco, a country where investments in large-scale renewable energy projects, such as the Ouarzazate solar complex, show that Africa can lead the green transition while meeting development needs. Colleagues, this session today is an opportunity not only to showcase successes, but also to confront barriers, including institutional, technical, and financial barriers that still stand in our way. Together, we must therefore co-develop solutions for strengthening national capacity for integrated planning, enhancing data and technical support, and most importantly, mobilizing innovative financing mechanisms that reward synergy in the implementation of the Rio Conventions rather than fragmentation. Looking ahead to COP30 in Belém, today's dialogue will help us chart a roadmap for Africa, one that places synergy building at the core of implementation, financing, and investment strategies. The African Development Bank stands ready to work with all partners to ensure that every dollar mobilized delivers multiple dividends, protecting nature, enhancing resilience, and driving inclusive growth for Africa's people. I look forward to an engaging discussion, to learning from your experiences, and to advancing together towards a future where the Rio Conventions truly reinforce one another in the African continent for the benefit of our people, our economies, and our ecosystems. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Dorsuma, for those remarks. I think you mentioned critical points, and we welcome and appreciate the collaboration with the African Development Bank under the Joint Rio Conventions Capacity Building Program. You highlighted that everyone recognizes the importance of synergies, but still there are barriers and challenges in how to move forwards towards a more integrated planning, and it's very encouraging to see how African Development Bank is supporting that, particularly from also how to move to implementation through financing approaches and facilities like you outlined. And we look forward to continue working with you and learning from your experiences, and I think you're spearheading the efforts in a very, very clear manner here in the continent. So thank you very much for that. To deepen on our understanding or to frame the discussions that will take place now, I would like to move to our keynote presentation, focus on why synergies matter and how can they deliver impacts from the perspective of the joint capacity building program, and also seeking to reap the benefits of integrated approaches when it comes to national planning and financing across the Rio Convention, using the instruments or the plans that from each of the conventions. So I'll provide this keynote presentation. Thank you. So this is, if you want to know a bit more about the Rio Convention's Joint Capacity Building Program, please feel free to scan the QR code. I will provide an overview of what is this program and what's its main focus. So the Rio Convention's Joint Capacity Building Program is a joint venture between the secretariats of the three Rio Conventions, and it's a very conducive collaboration as a result of a mandate from the Joint Liaison Group of the Rio Conventions to look at how to assist countries and stakeholders in better understanding the synergies and how they can work better, and also how to better enhance coordination and coherence in achieving the three Rio Conventions. So the target audience of this joint capacity building program is, of course, national focal points, but it's open to all stakeholders that are involved in the implementation of the different instruments. And here is where we have the key topics for synergies in the context of the Rio Convention's Joint Capacity Building Program, which, by the way, it started its implementation last year in 2024. And I will speak more about the activities that have been done and that will take place in the future. So the key topics are what Dr. Dorsuma mentioned: integrated planning between the NDCs, the NAPs, the NBSAPs, the land degradation neutrality targets. As we all know, each convention has now their instruments and a lot of processes related to these instruments, including updating. So the intention of focusing on this is precisely to provide great information about what are the instruments, what are the linkages, and learning from experiences from countries. An important cross-cutting area between all the Rio Conventions is the issue of local and indigenous peoples and knowledge. And of course, financing, accessing and mobilizing finance it's a key element and a key gap that has been highlighted multiple times in different discussions. Of course, there are also issues that need to be taken into account. For example, what is the trade-offs? And we're trying to also come up with materials that talk about the trade-offs. Of course, when talking about synergies, each convention has their objectives, the targets, and obviously the intention is to have a treatment that benefits equally all the conventions, not and we have to be mindful of what could be these trade-offs between achieving one target of one convention vis-a-vis the other. So in terms of what are the knowledge products this joint capacity building program is developing is, for example, a series of info briefs, providing entry points for synergies on various topics, general notion of synergies, the integrated planning, accessing and mobilizing finance, the role of local indigenous knowledge, joint monitoring, the trade-offs, like I mentioned. So we're also developing a series of guidelines, the how-to, more specific, a mix of self-paced learning modules and in-person hybrid training sessions. The hybrid training sessions have already taken place, and we're working now. When I say working, is the 3 secretariats of the Rio Conventions on a self-paced online learning module, together with, in collaboration with Informea. Informea, you are aware, is this, the United Nations Environmental Law and Conventions portal, and it's our very important repository of information on all the MEAs. So we're using this platform for hosting and developing these self-paced modules. Just an example of the past training sessions and webinars, and I see some colleagues that have participated in some of them, so on different topics, as mentioned. And now recently we have been moving and more specific in the context of the instruments. For example, how to build synergies in national adaptation plans, NAPs, how to build synergies in the context of NDPSAPs. The issue of finance, as I mentioned, is a recurring issue. So these webinars and all the materials, of course, are available in the Rio Convention's Joint Capacity Building Program webpage that you can access through the QR code. And just to highlight what are some of the entry points for synergies when it comes to financing. And this is just an example. Of course, we have the multilateral funds established and that serve as financial mechanism or operating entities of the 3 Rio Conventions. For example, the JEF, serving the 3 Rio Conventions. We also have the Green Climate Fund that's under the UNCCC, but of course has cross-cutting issues that are relevant for the other Rio Conventions. We have the Climate Investment Funds, and of course the Adaptation Fund. I think, as Dr. Dorsuma mentioned, one of the common denominators area is the nature-based solutions, ecosystem-based adaptation, anything that has to do how better manage sustainably a given landscape or territory. So that's a bit the common denominator, also for project and pipeline development. And we'll hear later on, I'm sure, from the NDC partnership, very interesting insights on what the work they're doing. So when you talk about national local financing mechanisms, what are the keys, what some of the keys to finance the synergies, to finance the actual synergistic projects? So, and here are some examples. The importance of build domestic funding mechanisms, and we have seen examples from Bangladesh, the Bangladesh Climate Change Trust Fund, the FAP-PM in Madagascar, Biofund, and other funds. So the national funds are an important instrument, or of course is part of a mix of instruments that can be complemented with multilateral funding. Developing innovative domestic financing option is something that it's a viable way of doing things. For example, earmarking of fees, taxes, and royalties on the extractive industry and the tourism sector. There are very interesting examples in the tourism sector. The use of green bonds to address climate change, desertification, and biodiversity loss-related issues. Something that also we're seeing is, and related to what Dr. Dosuma mentioned, is that it's about efficiencies. There are examples, for example, in Rwanda, about how doing projects in a synergistic manner have lower transaction costs and are more efficient, which is related to very interesting studies, for example, of the economics of doing synergies. There's a study in economics of land degradation that highlights precisely the economic benefits, also in terms of transaction costs, time investment, etc. Coming back to instruments or mechanisms, so using the existing national institutions and the experience, the direct access entities of the GCF, the national implementing entities of the Adaptation Fund. For example, South Africa, National Biodiversity Institute, SAMBI, as well an entity that cuts across. And this is a matter of related to what was mentioned earlier about the integrated planning, but also coordination, internal coordination, how to strengthen those capacities for integrated planning and coordination. So, talk about the importance of synergistic projects to attract private investment. So it goes back to the point that was discussed actually in an earlier event today, the value for money. How to use more efficiently limited resources by combining projects to address CBD, UNCCC, and UNCCD goals for comprehensive outcomes. Doing it in a way that resources can complement each other and show the multiple benefits. In terms of attractiveness for the private sector, of course they're dependent on the context and maybe sectors, but there are solutions that could offer long-term viability appealing to private sectors, and we have seen some examples and presented them in some of the webinars, for example, from the tourism sector. Of course, in Africa, there are a lot of initiatives already with high potential for synergies, and here I highlighted some of them. The Great Green Wall for the Sahara and the Sahel. We have heard presentations on this very interesting initiative that has, of course, an important focus on sustainable land management, but what benefits, of course, for climate and biodiversity conservation. The adaptation of African agriculture initiative, the Congo Basin Forest Partnership, Afri 100. So there are already a lot of initiatives that provide a good starting point in Africa for moving forward in materializing these synergies. Something that, another notion that we're looking at is this notion of integrating national financing and investment plans for synergies, not necessarily creating new frameworks or new instruments, but looking at what are the financing approaches or instruments for each instrument, be it NAP, MBSAP, NDC, how they can be better aligned and combined, in particular in a time of limited resources. So I will stop here, just a bit of a snapshot of what is the Joint Capacity Building Program and the framing, but just to kickstart the discussions, because now we will proceed to hearing from our distinguished panelists on what they're doing and what are the challenges that persist and how can they be best addressed. So, so now I would like to actually invite our panelists, distinguished panelists. We have a great panel. So I kindly invite them to come to the stage. So we have my colleague and friend, Mr. Joachim Leite, who's head of climate finance in the NDC partnership. We have Mr. Onesimus Muwesi, Regional Technical Advisor, Ecosystems and Biodiversity from UNDP. Before I continue, please excuse me if I mispronounce your names, but I'll do my best to make sure I pronounce them accurately. Mr. Satish Kumar Beliatahatan, Head Africa Regional Office, NABU. I hope the rest of our colleagues are available. They had some issues. Mrs. Hafsa Omar Abdillahi, Director of Climate Change and UNEP Focal Point for Somalia. Don't know she was able to make it. She's in the room. Mrs. Patience Gandiwa, Director, International Conservation Affairs from Zimbabwe. And Ms. Josefina Kakololo, Chief Conservation Scientist, Climate Change Unit, Government of Namibia. Welcome. Thank you very much. Unfortunately, maybe some of our panelists were not able to make it, but still, we have a very studied panel. So how we will conduct this session? So each speaker will have roughly 5 minutes to share experiences on building synergies, highlighting both successes and perceived challenges. I would really encourage to focus on not too much on the challenges, but how they're being addressed. I think there's a wealth of information on the solutions. So some of the guiding questions they will be asking our distinguished panelists is, what do you see as the main levers to strengthen synergies between climate, biodiversity, and land degradation agendas in the African context? Maybe together with that question, because this event is in the context of the Joint Rio Convention's Capacity Building Program, what are those capacity gaps still persisting and how to better address? And please do share an example of success in integrated planning or financing for synergies from the perspective of your country or institution. I'm happy to elaborate on the questions as needed, but I think we have a wealth of expertise to address them. Maybe we'll start with that, and maybe in a second round, I would ask you what are the priority solutions you would recommend to overcome the barriers. So I will start, excuse me, Joaquim, so could you give us your insights, please?
Thank you. Thank you very much, Alejandro, for the invitation. It's really a pleasure to be here. Thanks for also everyone who took your time to be here with us. So, inspired by your words, I'll try to bring in some of the good examples, the things that we have been seeing, and some solutions and opportunities. I think the relevance is very clear. It was outlined in the keynote speakers and the amazing introductions that you've made in terms of the importance of, especially in the context of very limited funding out there, be it national or international. We need to optimize and need to be synergistic, and also a very important, the integrated crisis that these three conventions try to address. So on the positive side, I mean, the partnership is a coalition of countries, developed and developing countries, and more than 100, so it's 240 members, 140 countries, and 100 international institutions. And we currently work and support directly more than 100 countries. And from the 103 countries that we are actively engaging and providing support, we already see a very strong interest in integrating those three conventions in practice. So a few numbers, so 87 of these countries that I mentioned, they have come forward to the partnership looking for a specific integration between climate and desertification, and almost 80 countries already working also in the integration and alignment between climate and biodiversity. So reflecting in the NDCs, reflecting the national development plans, reflecting into the planning frameworks, and more importantly, in the implementation of those. And I'll try to, you ask for the solutions or some of the important things that we have seen and are observing. And there are three things that I wanted to highlight. So the first one, we need to get buy-in and we need to get attention of these agendas at the highest levels of government. So we are here talking, let's say, amongst the converted. We all know the importance of climate, of biodiversity, of desertification, but we need to reach to the ministries of finance, the ministries of planning, to the central banks, so those that are really making the important decisions in the country. And for that, we need numbers, and we need to show how these three important topics link directly with social and economic objectives of the countries. Without that, we cannot get the right buy-in and the right push to bring this to the core of the planning instruments. And I think two examples that I would like to share. One is from my own country, Brazil, and we all know the importance of the Amazon region globally, but also at the national level, there have been many studies showing how the forest is crucial for the water and the rain in the agricultural productivity we have in the central part of the country and the southeast part of the country. So there were many studies showing, quantifying the impacts. If you are putting down the forest, what that means in practice in terms of agricultural productivity, in terms of jobs, in terms of economic development and social development. The other interesting example that I've learned this 2 days ago was in Mozambique, where they are working on protecting some areas in the central part of the country, and there was very limited political buy-in to that, but when they showed the connection that those particular protected areas were providing approximately 30% of the water for the capital of the country, the story changed in terms of political commitment and social commitment. So this first point on like the importance of showing the value that we have in ecosystem services, the impacts of climate change also in GDP and growth and others. The second one is we need to bring those, we have of course the NDCs, the implementation plans, the SAPs, the land degradation plans, but those countries use national development plans, sectoral development plans, they have economic policies, public financial management, so those need to be, those topics, climate development, climate biodiversity and land degradation should be at the core of those plans, should be integrated there. So once you have the buy-in, you need to build capacities, especially within ministries of finance, ministries of planning, central banks, because once they understand and this is reflected, then you can drive both the national budget in alignment with those, but also you can mobilize finance more effectively from multilateral development banks, from development finance institutions, bilateral donors that are always looking into those key documents. The third element that I wanted to highlight is the importance, and you started talking about it, Alejandro, on the integrated planning that can inform coordination and financing. So I think an interesting experience that we had the privilege to participate within the partnership was the journey of Rwanda on how they first unpacked the NDC into an NDC implementation framework, which was very broad, almost like more than 200 initiatives, but then they saw this, okay, this is a lot for us to manage, let's bring this into programs. So they built 3 programs that very much speak to the 3 conventions. So they have one on climate smart agriculture, one on sustainable land management, and the third one on sustainable cities, also sustainable urbanization. So those 3 programs now bring together the priorities across the sectors, and they have a financial instrument that probably everyone knows very well, the Rwanda Green Fund, that is kind of catalyzing national funding, but also international funding, pooling funding to develop and to advance those projects. The other example, again, also from Brazil, who is now the COP host, is like the Brazilian Ecological Transition Platform, where they set up specific priority areas, and some of them are very much focused on nature-based solutions and bioeconomy, land degradation, regenerative agriculture, sustainable forest management, bioeconomy, so bringing programs that you can anchor in the national policies, national strategies, but you bring in ministries of finance, planning, economy, national development banks that are very important, and then you catalyze funding and investments to drive those particular projects. So I think I will stop there for now, but really looking forward to the next steps and the discussions and hearing from other colleagues. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Joaquim. Very valuable insights, and I thank you for making the point of involving ministers of finance, planning, and as you said, making the case, but with numbers that are understandable, if I may use that word, for ministers of planning and finance, because they deal in their own language in the context of country priorities. So I think that's very important. Something else that I think it's very interesting to mention, the example from Rwanda, that is not necessarily aligned by the instruments themselves, but by the themes that cut across the convention. So I think that's a very interesting. I think the work the NDC partnership is doing is a very good example, and you didn't mention it, but I know there's a strong collaboration with the MBSAP accelerator. So, okay, so you'll talk later. Excellent. So let me move now to a national perspective. So, Habsa from Somalia, can you give us your insights, please? Yes.
Good morning. Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. I am Hafsa Umar Abdullahi, Director of Climate Change. I'm happy to be one of the panelists. So thank you very much, moderator, and also those who arranged it. So I think this synergies for Rio Convention, and it's a good idea. And that when Somalia, the Rio Convention was started in 1992, and 1992, but at that time Somalia was the worst civil war. So we didn't ratify it and join it any convention. But after 1 decade, around 2000, starting from 2002 until 2009, we joined the Rio Conventions and we started ratification of everything in, and it is targeted. So, and from that country, I can say the main leverage, it can be integrated policy and planning. So for Somalia now, we are working how to align our NDC, our NAB, our MB service, our LDN, all and Rio Convention. So also according to the main point that we can align is to use nature-based solutions because it can work with the under climate, under land restoration, under biodiversity protection. So nationally, we made some initiatives like 2022, our president, His Excellency Hassan Sheikh Mohamud, launched an initiative called Green Somalia, which and work is planting 10 million trees and within 5 years. So that and planting trees, it can work under the three conventions. It can help you to reach the targets. Also, Somalia joined it with the African Union flagship Great Green Wall Initiative with a 10 million USD that working with a partnership with IFAD. So now Somalia is progressing to ratify all these. And for the finance synergies, and we developed some projects that are making cross-cutting for biodiversity, land restoration, and also in climate change. And now Somalia got 100 million project called in Somali Ugbad, which means hope. So which has different components with the land restoration, with the climate resilience in agriculture, with the landscape and biodiversity protection. So that is the effort is in Somalia doing for the synergies of the Rio Conventions, and also we try to integrate the community because climate change affected the community. So also there is a concrete example is that Somalia doing synergies for these and Rio Conventions. We have a national agenda called National Transformation Plan, which is a plan that the country use to make the projects, to use the development, and it starts from 2025 until 2029. So it has something called True North, or which the country use the direction for the coming 5 years. So the True North in that national agenda is called mainstreaming climate change adaptation practices in agriculture, livestock, fishery, and eco-friendly infrastructure, energy, water sector, and also reducing greenhouse gas emission by 20%. Although we didn't emit any greenhouse gas, but we are planning to reduce what we now emitted, and also 5% for restoration degraded land, and also increasing climate finance for 300 million. Then you can see how our national agenda integrate all these areas. So according to the priorities, I can say, in Africa or in East Africa or like countries in Somalia, when we are making any priorities, we need political commitments. And also we need regional cooperation is that making these efforts make together. And also I can mention the most important, I think, wheel that we need is a finance. So even if you make priorities under your biodiversity, under your land restoration, under your climate change, but you didn't get any investment, you cannot implement anything. So the most important priorities that Africa need is cooperation and also finance and technical support, because in East Africa, like a country of Somalia, we need many expertise that can at least implement or understand the context of Somalia, how to work together. So for now, I can stop. So I will look forward to the next steps for the thank you.
Thank you very much. Very interesting example where you mentioned that you have your targets and your interventions on how they contribute to different targets or goals of the instruments, be it NDCs and VSAPs, land degradation, LDN targets. But I think what I found very interesting also is the transformation plan. So you're aligning it with your overall development policies, but still the challenges of finance persist, and it's related to what Joaquin mentioned, how to provide greater maybe technical assistance and capacity building to be able to access and mobilize finance. Thank you very much. Let's now hear from Onesimus, your perspective from UNDP. From your cities.
Thank you very much, moderator, excellencies, delegates, and colleagues. On behalf of UNDP, first of all, I would like to appreciate UNFCCC for the opportunity to be part of this panel and to meet colleagues from different parts of the world. I work with the regional office here in Addis Ababa with the UNDP, and you are very much welcome to Ethiopia and to Addis Ababa, all of you. In terms of the nexus issues on nature, climate, let me first re-echo the message that has already been made by the previous speakers, the African Development Bank had in the presentations, that climate and the biodiversity crisis are two sides of the same coin. And we cannot talk about fixing the climate problem without fixing the biodiversity loss, whether here in Africa or in other continents. And there is all evidence that is clear across the board from science and practice that the two must be treated together. And the recent World Economic Report reemphasizes the fact that these two crises are potentially a global problem affecting all economies, and this is evidence. And therefore, our response needs to similarly connect the dots between the nature crisis and the climate crisis. UNDP has made significant effort to develop and deliver a nexus offer on the climate and nature agenda, focusing on delivery of integrated solutions, policy coherence and alignment, and also integrated financing. This includes our flagship initiatives on the UNDP's Climate Promise and Nature Pledge. And these two are supporting about 150 countries to align nature and climate related initiatives. As underscored by the UNDP administrator, protecting nature is one of the smartest investments that you can make for delivering on both people's needs and the planet. At the heart of the nexus is the need to strengthen policy coherence, alignment, and accelerate finance to drive integrated action, responding to the objectives of the Paris Agreement, but also the global biodiversity framework and the SDGs. However, we note that the financing for both nature and climate, while contributing to the same, continue to be treated as different, and therefore they need to integrate them. The investing in climate seems to be one of those areas that we need to align with investing in nature. The UNDP OECD report released recently in June emphasized the fact that we have more returns on investing in nature to deliver on climate challenges than any other level of investment. Across the continent and across the globe, UNDP is supporting countries to work on national biodiversity strategies and action plans, which Alejandro has already referred to, but also to enhance their NDCs. Over 139 working in collaboration with UNEP, UNDP supporting countries to improve their national biodiversity strategies, but also to revise NDCs. We are also, through our initiatives across Africa, supporting countries to align NDC and NBSAP, and therefore the initiative of UNFCCC is very much appreciated. One of the key challenges for nature and climate is national financing. And one of the key areas that UNDP has been championing is supporting biodiversity financing initiatives across the countries. And we have over 130 countries now being supported to develop national biodiversity finance plans, but also, apart from financing biodiversity, to align and integrate climate financing within those strategies that they are preparing. Currently, we have undertaken an initiative using artificial intelligence to do a mapping across countries on the extent to which NDCs and NBSAPs are aligned. And if you have some evidence is coming up direct to the fact that species and ecosystem conservation deliver the highest opportunity for alignment. So that is one, that if you have protect big species like elephants and their ecosystems, the opportunity to deliver on emission reduction or absorption sequestration is higher. The other aspect is on adaptation and mitigation, that these two areas are also showing a lot of coherence. In Africa here particularly, agriculture, forestry, and land use are key areas where we see that there is opportunity for alignment. Many countries this year are supposed to submit their revised NDCs. The NBSAPs were due last year, although they have not finalized. So the question is, how do we actually make these two run together? And the opportunity, apart from integrated financing, national financing initiatives that UNDP is supporting across the countries, there is opportunity for us to align the processes. One of the opportunities is for aligning the processes. The NDC process aligning with the NBSAP. Can we be able to do this? Can we talk about the nexus without aligning the processes? If we align the policies and the frameworks, but how do we align the processes, one against the other? And therefore, the examples that we have highlighted in these countries, Rwanda, Maldives, Mexico, Uganda, where I come from, they provide us some level of evidence that actually there is no need to treat them as different. They are actually the same. We are talking about the triplets of Rio, the three conventions. You cannot deliver one without the other. And therefore, the imperative for all of us in the room, but also outside this room, to work together to make this happen. In closing, I would say that alignment of biodiversity and climate strategies and finance not only presents an immediate opportunity to address planetary crisis, but also makes a lot of economic sense for economies to be able to deal with poverty and food security across the globe. And therefore, the need for us to demonstrate traction in terms of how we align policy, how we strengthen coherence, and how we strengthen the processes. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Onesimus, for that intervention. I think you mentioned the UNDP's two big flagship initiatives, the Nature Pledge and the Climate Promise. Not working. So, and I think that's a very good example of two big framework initiatives in the context of alignment. So that offers a huge opportunity. As you mentioned, the processes for updating NDCs and NBSAPs, I think that offers an opportunity in terms of countries are revising their NDC and their NBSAP, so to come together and look at this alignment. But it also offers challenges because I think it's an issue of capacities. A lot of countries have limited capacities, and I think that's where we can maybe discuss how to enhance those capacities and materialize that alignment. And as you said, the case for efficiencies is there, but maybe we need more efforts to transmit the message. No? It goes back to Joaquin's point that who do we convince that this makes sense? We all know, I think it makes sense, but we need maybe more efforts to transmit that. Just some reflections. Let's hear now from our colleague from NABU, if your experiences are very valuable. I know the wonderful work you're doing, so please share it with us.
Thank you, Mr. Alessandro, for the opportunity, and thank you for the partners for organizing this very important session. 2 days ago, I think the Deputy Executive Secretary spoke about the challenges that coffee sector is facing, and how climate change is impacting coffee sector. And you'll be surprised to know that at this point of time, a farmer invests so much efforts in growing organic coffee, and then someone else does a traditional way of plantation coffee, and the prices are the same. So it is very difficult to go to a farmer to convince him to conserve and to go the organic way. So, I think the issue is beyond the three, global environmental agreements. I think what matters is the meaningful and concrete progress on the ground. So I want us to bring to the ground where we work, most of the civil societies where we work. So NABU, we are part of, the global family of 123 partners of BirdLife International, of which 26 are in Africa. And we have been very active in negotiations, especially Substar 14 agenda. And I think our partners have also, our power is in the partnership. So we have also a number of briefs. One of the brief is the nature for climate, which many of us, we use in countries to actually to seek synergies. So I will, I think I'll just respond to one issue which our colleagues have mentioned here, which is about, finances and investments. And I think, the statistics are really, how do I put it? Because some of our countries, we have received just 1% of what we have asked for implementation of NDCs in the last 5 years. So things are very, critical, on the ground. So I will directly respond to, I have a number of points, I will come back to it later, but I will directly respond to, your issue of how can we, what can we do in order to address these challenges. One, I think, at international level, we have to ensure that the Substar 14 agenda item moves forward and has concrete results. Because what has happened is now, I was attending the finance events on day 1 and 2 here, and the multiplicity of activities have also jumped into the financing sector, and that's why I liked your initiative of having a national climate financing, plan and strategy document, because that will help us. And, the AFRI 100 is a very good example of that. So I think the Substar 14 agenda item has to be moved forward with concrete progress, because otherwise, and as you know, I will not go into the challenges, because the institutional setup in each of our countries are actually following the international needs, and then that's where the problem lies. So we have to address that at the top. I think at national level, I think thank you for Alexandro, your leadership, because one agenda that actually in UNFCCC that moves forward very well every year is the capacity building, thanks to your leadership, thanks to the joint Rio Convention capacity building program. But the issue is, how do we take it to the subnational level? At the local level, I'm very sure that when you go to a farmer and ask him, what are conventions, he doesn't know that. For him, environment is everything. His seeds, his livestock, his homestead, it's everything. So how do we do that? So I think the issue is at the subnational level, because that's where the implementation, even the government officials, various stakeholders. So I would suggest at national level to enhance the capacity building initiatives, but also, I think our colleague from NDC partnership can also throw more light, because he's working on finances, because there is a capacity building need that also needs to be given to our developmental partners, because some of the finances that comes within the country actually also perpetuates this siloed approach. So that also has to happen. and how do we go to subnational level? So that's a challenge for you, which possibly you may not do a webinar or, the Informia capacity building initiatives. But at the local level, I think, I would go to that plan and strategy document that you talked about, because that's very important. And then we all have to ensure that we follow certain aspects when we do develop project proposals. So for NABU, we have a new project that we start in 2026 from the International Climate Initiative. It's a $15 million project where we try to embed biodiversity into land and climate change issues. But I think I think the fundamental issue for all these things to happen is also the capacity building, which actually you are doing. But I stop here. I'll be back with more information later.
Thank you so much, Satish Kumar, for that intervention. I think very interesting you said, because at the very local level, synergies are evident, but they don't call synergies. They're not called NABs, they're not called NDCs. It just makes sense. It's like mangrove conservation. I think it's one of the first best examples of synergies in action when done well, because it benefits the climate, it enhances resilience, biodiversity conservation. But I think the point you made in connecting better the national processes with the subnational is fundamental. And I think, and maybe that's where interventions from development partners, as you say, not being too provocative, but there's also room for more coherence and coordination at that level in the provision of support, maybe. And I think the NDC partnership is working a lot on that, and the MBSAP accelerator. So thank you very much for those insights. So we finished the first round, and I know there are many things to say, but in the spirit of time, I will ask you maybe just to come back with what could be your, let's say, #1 priority solution would you recommend to overcome the current barriers? And thinking of a vision of having materialized these synergies from a realization perspective. So projects being invested on the ground, benefiting, or clearly showing they benefit the various instruments. So what would be your priority solution? You mentioned capacity building is one of them, but yeah, what would be that? And maybe let's start with a colleague from Somalia. What would you be your priority? I mean, you mentioned for finance, it's a gap, but what would you recommend be the solution to address that gap in terms of your own needs? Yeah.
Yeah, thank you very much. And I think the gap of finance that Somalia faces, it's not only finance, but also the gap of capacity building. So to address this challenge, as a national, we have to make alignment our coordination, and the national level, I can say, and the international partners must see how the developing countries like Somalia, where the climate change affected, make easier the procedures of climate finance. Like now, when you make and develop project, and then you send it to whether GCF or adaptation fund or CHEF, it takes too long to approve the concept note and then to develop the proposal. Yes. My suggestion is to make easier the procedures of finance, and also to help the countries how they access the climate finance directly, apart from using international donors. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. Maybe this is the right transition to maybe ask Joaquim. You had some points from your previous intervention. Please also elaborate on those.
No, thank you. Thank you very much, and very interesting to hear the interventions from colleagues as well. So yeah, I would like to focus on a few things. So I mentioned the three elements, right? The rationale on the why, and the arguments to really bring this to top level decision makers. I mentioned the mainstreaming, the capacities of some of this core planning, finance, national financial institutions to bring this at the core of what they do. And also this programmatic or integrated planning that they can drive coordination and financing. I think the point that I would like to add, and you mentioned it very well, is to be real and to be concrete, right? And to think about the program, what is the reality of communities, of people on the ground, and then facing and prioritizing those realities, then you can think about the best instruments to address that. So, because some of these instruments, they live on a very high global level. As you mentioned, many countries you might go to a farm, or even even to go to the farm like the smallholder, you can go to a city out of like or even any citizen, and they might not know what the real conventions are. So I think bringing this to the real world, I think is very important. One of the points that was mentioned a few times on integration in terms of the planning in BSAP, NDCs and other instruments. And that's something that we've been working very closely with colleagues from NDSAP Accelerator, also the Synergies coordination platform that is hosted by the 3 secretariats. There are like more than 20 stakeholders engaged. And it's really to work together. And I think especially with them in BSAP Accelerator, there is a very interesting experience because they were created after the partnership was already, let's say, living and breathing for a few years. So we have collaborated very closely with them since the beginning, explaining our model, how we work, but also now they are established, we work very closely together. And there are 4 areas where we are working in. This links very well with the capacity building elements that you mentioned, because we take on requests that countries, governments submit, and we mobilize support for that. And the 4 areas that we are working on. So the first one is really sharing requests, sharing intelligence, and leveraging support to each other's requests and trying to connect the dots there when those requests are coming in. We also have a structure of in-country facilitators, so people that are within the government supporting countries on, especially Ministry of Climate Change and Environment, but also more and more Ministries of Finance and Planning. So connecting those advisors that we have with the facilitators and IMSAPs are also working on. So this synergies can be identified early on and integrated planning can be fostered. The third one is on really supporting this integration between biodiversity, or reflecting NBSAPs and NDC and biodiversity objectives, but also land degradation inside the NDCs and the design process. And the fourth one is also very important to bring in and to have knowledge and capacity building, not only products, but also offers, so that we can foster the concrete and clear understanding of what this means on the ground and work together so the synergies can be clear, as we mentioned, both at the ground level, but also importantly at the planning level and in between, in the connection between them. So, thank you.
Great, thank you, thanks, Joachim. I'll come back to your point maybe after hearing from others, because I think those are very useful inputs for the next phase of the Rio Convention's Joint Capacity Building Program. But let's hear from Onesimus.
Thank you very much. I'd like to reflect on the institutional coordination mechanisms at the national level, but also at the global level, on how do we break the barriers and the silo approach. We have also talked about the fact that the farmer in rural Ethiopia or in rural Uganda doesn't care what you're talking about as conventions. What is important is what solutions are being delivered on the ground. But many times we continue to operate. Today the farmer is meeting Onesimus, the next day is meeting Yando, and one is talking about climate, the other one is talking about biodiversity, and we are not even making the connection between the two, and the farmer is actually confused on which is which. And so I think the institutional coordination mechanisms at the national level need to be re-emphasized. When you go in countries, the CBD focal point, the UNFCCC focal point, UNCCD focal point, they hardly meet. The opportunity for them to discuss what are the synergies in between what the 3 conventions are supporting rarely happens. I've had the opportunity to work both in government and also working at the country office with the UN system, and having to speak the same language and connect together is a big challenge. And I think this initiative of Rio Convention's joint capacity building program is a very, very, very big opportunity for strengthening institutional coordination mechanisms at the national level and deliver on results. The other aspect is inclusive engagement. Indigenous people, civil society, government, private sector, being able to speak together, understanding the connections, both at the national level, but also at community level. When speaking to the private sector, every private sector person's interest is bottom line. The question is, do they know the connection between their bottom line and nature? The health of ecosystems and the health of the people, do they know the extent to which their investment in cleaning the environment actually improves the capacity of the people to buy their products, and therefore be able to connect the dots? So my other aspect is more on how do we drive inclusive processes that enable people to see how they are connected to each other, how upstream and downstream communities, how the private sector actions affect positively or negatively the people they serve. Thank you.
No, thank you very much, Onesimus. And I think the issue of the private sector is an important one. As you say, that obviously there's an interest, main interest on profit, on bottom line. But I think if you're able to make clearer those connections in a language they understand, they can also be an important player with the right mechanisms or the right incentives, and with right partners like the African Development Bank, could be a good opportunity. Of course, this depends on national and local context, but I think it's something worthwhile pursuing. Janshiti Kumar, please.
Yeah, thank you, Alessandro. I think, my colleague Onesimus, he welcomed all the delegates to the land of origin, and this is also the land where coffee originated, and coffee comes from Kaffa, the region Kaffa. So I think just echoing all what we discussed, I think we have to keep the common man in Kaffa in our minds whenever we discuss anything inside this hall, and then I think it will make more practical. We will have more practical solutions. So the common man in Kaffa is going to be in our minds for the next couple of days. I think Mr. Onesimus also mentioned about inclusive engagement. I wanted to give you an example. Actually, in Ethiopia, Joachim will be very happy that it is the Ministry of Planning and Development which handles climate change issues, which is also handling the environmental issues. So, we are already mainstreaming most of our climate change issues into the planning itself, planning and implementation stage. So, the government of Ethiopia requested more than 300 CSOs to come together to make an assessment of what's missing in NDC2 and what should be included into NDC3. So we did over the past 4 months a comprehensive assessment. And of course, we did use the nature in NDC brief that our Nature for Climate colleagues who work with you, as we say in Ethiopia, Badam, a very strong manner with you. So we have now given those suggestions to the government, and right after the Climate Week and Summit, we are going to have a workshop to actually synergize not only our views, but also our activities when it comes to NDC3. But again, coming to the priorities, I think the national siloed institutional arrangements is just a mirror of those that is coming from international level. So I would once again request you, Mr. Alessandro, I think we know that you have been very instrumental in getting many of these decisions through. So in COP30, and it is 30 years since COP, since Rio, and we are still discussing how to rectify what has happened. So I think it would be very important that the Substa 14 agenda items move forward with concrete results. And I think the priority at national level would be to see how best we could go to the subnational level and build those capacities there. But fundamentally for Africa, I think, all of us will agree what our sister from Somalia just mentioned is about the finances, because we have received the short end of the stick, and less than 1% of money that Africa has asked for NDC implementation has flowed into Africa. So the priority is also finances. Thank you, Alessandro.
Thank you very much, and thanks to all our panelists. Now I would like just to give the opportunity to our audience to ask a question, but also provide their insights, experiences on how to best build synergies and what is needed to complement what we heard from our distinguished panelists. If you want to take the floor, please come up to the tables in the center aisle and pose your question directly there or your comment. So please, if you can just, thank you. Is the microphone working, please?
Yes, thank you for all the presenters.
Sorry, if you give me, maybe our technical crew, if they can help us with the microphone. Yeah, now it should be fine.
Yes, thank you for all the presenters for sharing their ideas and knowledge about these synergies. And also thank you for the initiative. My question is that we notice that if we have a RED Plus project, it can be also a biodiversity project, and because it deals with forestry, and also it will deal with biodiversity conservation. And this is also can be used as combating desertification. My question to my sister from Somalia, because we are sharing the same problems of climate change, biodiversity losses, and also desertification. If she can share what is done to facilitate the energy for the institutional arrangement, if you have some experiences in this issue. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Would you mind repeating the question? The sound was not...
If you can do any institutional arrangement for these three, because we know that in our most countries, different institutions maybe deal with this issue. So if we are looking for synergies, we have to look at the national level to have, for example, an institutional arrangement to make this all connected or coordinated. Thank you.
Thank you for that question. Maybe let's see if there are other comments or questions before giving it back to our colleague. I see our princess, Abse. You have a comment or question, and I think further in the back, Sandra.
Thank you very much, and first of all, congratulations on the combining the three conventions, also optimizing the implementation. I think that is, we may comment this at first, and also for the input, how we could go forward. And with the COP presidencies, with the Muchirao, this is a kind of Muchirao also bringing all hands on deck to come together and work. And you know, Alejandro, we are developing also together a project which is called the Muchirao Burkindi Coalition on Capacity Building. And I see connection is more a comment than how to consolidate our efforts on the field. And our colleagues from the UNDP were saying something right. Our farmers on the field, they don't mind whether it's which convention it is. At the end of the day, it's the delivery. What am I going to? What seeds do I need? What are the rainfalls? And it's up to us to consolidate and to bring them that integrated solutions. So once again, thank you. It was just a contribution, and also let you know that we at the PCCB have the privilege to serve as a co-chair. We are working onto that project under the umbrella to support also the delivery on the field. Once again, congratulations to all the distinguished panelists. Thank you, Alejandro, for giving me the opportunity to contribute.
Thank you, Princess, and I really appreciate your intervention, because I think this discussion is also about connections. It's connecting things to make it more efficient, connect not only implementation of the conventions per se, but with other initiatives. Thank you very much. Sandra, please go ahead. Please, technical crew. Thank you.
Okay.
There.
Thank you so much, Alejandro, and thank you so much to the panelists. My name is Sandra Guzman from the Climate Finance Group for Latin America and the Caribbean.
No, please, the microphone. Can someone help us to make sure the microphone? Or, yeah, there's one in the table. So, Christina, if you can hand it over to Sandra. If it's working, I hope. Yeah.
Now, thank you so much. My name is Sandra Guzman from the Clama Finance Group for Latin America and the Caribbean, and it's great to hear these interactions. And I have a comment and a question. My comment is, for sure, we understand that it's incredibly important to create these synergies across the three conventions to maximize efforts, because most of the times are the same institutions involved in the operationalization of this. Actually, in Latin America, some countries are building reports that include commitments for the three conventions. For instance, Panama just created a plan where they are including commitments for the three conventions in one document, as well as Colombia and others. But the problem that we are analyzing and trying to track is the issue of access to finance. How to avoid that donors want to support with the same bag to all the different efforts, because at the end of the day, it's impossible to cover all the different goals with just one bag of money in trying to maximize the existence of this money. But it's a matter of how to increase financial support across the different, let's say, conventions, but still growing, scaling up finance instead of trying to cover just one document with the same money. So I would like to hear the experiences from the panelists, how to continue increasing the financial support to really maximize the implementation of these conventions without losing the idea of new and additional resources from the development agenda, for instance, which was one of the critical debates that we have in Seville. So I would like to hear the experiences, because at the end of the day, what we want is really more money and better money to be able to implement the three conventions in an effective and timely manner. So thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Sandra. It's not an easy question, and maybe some of our panelists would like to give their thoughts. I think an important point you make is, one thing is to make the financing more effective by promoting the synergistic approaches rather than going through individual processes that have higher transaction costs, but still remains the issue of scale. Maybe let's then go back to our distinguished panelists, maybe from Somalia first, to that direct question.
Thank you very much, sister from Sudan. And the question about what make easy us to say and to make synergy between the Rio Convention. In Somalia, we have a Ministry of Environment and Climate Change, which and the three conventions work under it. So we have a Department of Climate Change, which works UNFCCC related, and also we have a Department of Biodiversity and Wildlife Protection, which is an CBD works under it, and also we have Environmental Protection Department, which works under CCD. So also we have a national committee, which is an line ministries or technical committee, and which is related to the natural resources in general. So we have that national committee, which we work together with when we are developing projects or any ideas. And also we have a parliamentary committee, which is called Natural Resources and Committee in the Parliament, which when we develop technically something and from line ministries and then from the cabinet, which is called a climate committee, and then our parliamentary work together. And also in the side of civil society and private sector and our donors, we have something called pillar working group, means that pillar is called environment and climate resilience pillar, which we have a meeting every quarter or twice a year to discuss what projects can we develop and related those Rio conventions or general natural resources. That's what we use as an enrichment. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And I just want to point out that I think this type of exchanges are very useful, and between what you do in Somalia, and I hope that this proves useful for you to use as a model, as a reference. So that maybe then now, based on Sandra's question, maybe your reflections, but since we're coming to the closing, maybe, and here I want to take benefit of your expertise, because this event is under the framework of the Rio Convention's Joint Capacity Building Program. So, and we're looking at how this program can be more effective and continue. So we'd really appreciate your suggestion based on what we discussed, noting that capacity building is an important element that came through. What do you think we can do more in this program? Of course, it's a program between the three secretariats, but we rely on the partners. So looking also to work closer with global, regional, and subnational partners in the measure possible. So over to you. Who wants to take it first? Joachim.
No, thank you. I'll try to cover. I think Sandra's question probably need more than 1 or 2 minutes to address. But I'll try to link both the point that you asked and also the challenges in mobilizing the finance at the scale that is needed and also at the speed, right? So I think what we see is that we have to work on the system. So it's not one just on the financier side, it's on both sides as well. So there are a lot of things that can happen at the country level, and we started touching upon some of them on the institutional coordination, the alignment, the capacities within national institutions to really prioritize and work in an integrated manner. And that needs a lot of work because it's like there is a lot of you lose a lot in translation, right? We come from environment ministries or like agricultural ministries or like people working biodiversity. There is a language, there is a way of working, there is a way of operating. Then you go to the financiers, it's a different universe. So understanding each other, building capacities there, but also increasing this alignment and this coordination. It's very important at the national level, but there is a lot to do, and we see, and that has been a lot of efforts, for example, through the discussions on the reforming of the financial systems that came through the G20, that came through a lot of the reforms that are taking place in the national development the international development banks, the multilateral DFIs. So I think there is importance also in terms of aligning, reducing transaction costs, and moving more and more from like away from a project by project approach to a programmatic and a system approach. So instead of giving finance to a specific project, how do you create a de-risking instrument that then you can bring a lot of private sector stakeholders? We know that the scenario in terms of mobilizing finance is not easy because of the reduced public finance that is out there, and that forces us to be more strategic on how we use this very limited public finance available to catalyze private investments at scale. And all of that needs a lot of capacity building. I think what we can say on the partnership side is that we were created by countries and we work like to support and to serve countries. So we are there to assist and getting requests from governments and mobilizing, working with our members. UNDP is one of the main supporters of requests coming through the partnership. There are 99 plus that are also working. So whatever we can do to provide and support and mobilizing assistance to this capacity that are needed, but also working with other stakeholders, we are there, and we believe in that. That's part of our DNA. So just through collaboration, we can reach the level of efficiency and scale that is needed. So thank you.
Thank you very much. In terms of strengthening the engagement, first, I wanted to respond to the question on access to finance, which was raised last. I think there's an increasing shift even in the financing entities to bring this together. The Global Environment Facility, since GEF6, have been moving towards integrated programming and financing. And in GEF8, they provided full flexibility for countries. Before GEF6, before GEF8, there were allocations for biodiversity, for climate change, for land degradation separately. And you had to develop a project on climate change, you develop a project on biodiversity, and from the previous cycles. In GEF8, the decision was to provide full flexibility. So you can use climate change funds to finance biodiversity. You can use biodiversity fund to finance climate action or land degradation. And so in terms of the financing landscape, I think there is a strong shift into that, but also there is also a strong shift in terms of integrated programming. Again, the GEF, from GEF6, they piloted integrated programs. Two, I think they were about 3. They have increased up to 11 integrated programs on water, on biodiversity, on food security, on restoration. And those integrated programs have driven bridging the nexus between the 3 conventions. So I think we have an opportunity across the board. In terms of, I think where we need to strengthen, again, as I mentioned, is on institutional coordination in terms of when it comes to the country level. There are a few examples globally and particularly in Africa where there's a shift. The likes of Rwanda, where they have developed a specific climate and nature financing strategy and set up one unit in the Ministry of Finance to deal with that. The same applies to Uganda and other countries. So there's also movement at national level. In terms of reporting, I think one of the other areas where the joint capacity building program could support countries in terms of integrated reporting on the conventions. Namibia is currently preparing a nature and climate nexus report, allowing to demonstrate how the Rio conventions support each other. So those are initiatives we probably want to bring on board. For UNDP, at the global level, we have established a nature climate nexus team. We've developed a global offer which is supporting across Africa, LAC, Asia and Pacific, and Arab states. And I provide the anchor in Africa for the Nexus rollout in Africa, and we are available to support countries through UNDP committee offices, but also within the regional offices that we do have either in Bangkok or Addis Ababa or elsewhere to support countries in this endeavor. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Alexandro. I think, at international level, it's a Substar 14 agenda item. And I would also, there is a small challenge there too. It's not only the Rio conventions, but it's also the 800 plus environmental agreements and the decisions that have come out of it. And I think if we can get something done in that agenda item, then it will flow down, it will mirror in national level. But at national levels, I think a very important aspect is what you have mentioned is the National Financing Investment Plan and Strategy document, because that can provide a broad-based guidance, not only for national governments, but also for developmental partners, because as I said, sometimes the developmental finance also perpetuates these things. But practically, I would also like to suggest, because these kind of discussions are very crucial, so the upcoming capacity building hub, if you can have a Synergies day, and that would be great. And the last suggestion is, we, the non-state actors, for us, many of us who are led by the BirdLife International Secretariat based in UK, we are very happy to also engage with you. Possibly it is also good to have a discussion amongst non-state actors before COP30, so that some innovative ideas that comes from the ground up, because we work with communities and we convince communities that they should be conserving. And I think the last one is to keep the common man in kaffa in our minds when we do most of the decisions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Would you like to add something? Okay. Now you addressed already very well the question, so I think we're reaching the conclusion of this very interesting session. Thank you very much for those suggestions, and we'll take them on board and continue engaging with you. I think what I take out is that we're not talking about highly sophisticated technical solutions or changing drastically frameworks. It's just a little bit of better understanding, coordination, and capacity building. So, and it's for us, and I'm talking on behalf of the Rio Convention's Joint Capacity Building Program, it's very encouraging to see that a lot is already happening. Just need to take it a bit to the next level, and how, at least from the Secretariat perspective, we can help doing that. As mentioned, subnational is important, but maybe we as secretaries cannot go subnationally, but we can work with others that are already there and see how we can complement efforts. Something that I think is also very encouraging is there are very good examples out there of how this is happening. You mentioned Namibia. I think Somalia is a very good example. Someone mentioned Panama in Latin America. So I think there are already things moving that can be good references to exchange views, peer-to-peer learning, etc. Thinking also on capacity building. And I think also the issue of this better coordination in the support provision is important, and I think I welcome the efforts of NDC Partnership and the NBSAP Accelerator. So I think that's important to factor in, and I think Rwanda is a very good example. And I think I know that support providers are strong champions of this as support providers. So I think it's a lot of encouraging positive developments. Now we've been talking about synergies for 30 years, so now we have everything to materialize it. I think we're in a perfect spot. So thank you very much to our distinguished panelists, and also want to acknowledge and thank the African Development Bank, and we also look forward to continue the conversations we started in Bonn in June under the Joint Capacity Building Program. So thank you very much to our colleagues from the African Development Bank and to our distinguished panelists, and thank you to you, the audience, for being here, present, and actively engaged. Thank you very much, and here close this session. We're just having a group photo. If our photographer.